Why have most tertiary institutions stopped student walk-in applications? Are tertiary online applications an academic exclusion for the poor? How does the NSFAS help address the country's acute skills shortage? Are tertiary institutions coping with the escalating demand for higher education? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Mpho Tsedu. The scramble for space by newly matriculated learners at the country's tertiary institutions has reached alarming proportions. Nearly a third of all students who have qualified to enter university are unlikely to be accommodated. Stats indicate that the number of pupils who qualified for higher education had doubled in the past 20 years, from 420,000 to just under 1 million. These escalating numbers have put a lot of strain on higher learning institutions, with several of them no longer accepting walk-in applications. Meanwhile, high university fees are blamed for draining a lot out of the National Student Financial Scheme, a fund aimed at assisting poorer students. My guests today are Kai Ngwanyana, spokesperson for the Department of Higher Education and Training, Professor Kinta Berger, Registrar at the University of Johannesburg, and Thabo Mloja, Deputy President of SASCO. Welcome to the show. Registrar, let's talk about the walk-ins. Yes. You have banned them. Was it because of the unfortunate tragedy that happened the other year, or was it time that you had to ban that?
I think it was time, and it was also a wake-up call for the university, because up to that incident, up to 2012, we had these long queues, as that yes. We are seeing now at other institutions also. We had these long queues, and it was not a student-friendly process. Yeah. So we have put in place an alternative process, which is an online process, yeah. which is available by means of a cell phone or by means of a computer. And then if there's applicants that do not have access, then there's the call center, a very extended call center during this period. So what it means then is that instead of physical walk-ins, late applications yes. coming in that didn't apply last year, that they now have this option of, if they haven't applied, then there's this system that we have. We call it the late inquiry system, because it's about inquiry of spaces available, mm-hmm. but in some instances also those that did apply and perhaps now have a different outcome after their grade 12 results, because they the most apply on their grade 11 results, okay. that they may want to change from one choice to another, and all that they can do without standing in queues. Okay.
Now, we know that there was an extended post office strike, which I would imagine somehow affected that process of application. What do you do now?
We had last year our online applications was about 86-87%. Oh. So most of our applications came in, online. Okay. So, but our application process closed on the 30th of September last year, and then we did allow for the paper-based ones that came via the post office still to be processed. So that we processed in late December and then even early January. Okay. So we included that, but that was a very small percentage.
Okay. SASCO. I know that, this time you're probably busy organizing the biggest boycotts. It has become normal that whenever institutions of higher learning open, SASCO goes on strike. This year, what are you going to be toying about?
I think in the first place, it's not necessarily to organize a strike. In the first place, is to try to assist the students who come back from holidays as returning students who are most likely to be excluded because of a number of reasons. Some could be academic, some could be financial. But most importantly, also to welcome the first years who are coming in. And these first years are not necessarily the class of 2014.
Yes.
It's those who have been excluded by the system for over time, because the sector can only accommodate 2 million maximum. We're speaking about universities and colleges, and we have about 3.2 million young people who are not working, who are not in schools in the country. So it simply says annually, as much as we can have 200,000 spaces in the universities and another 200,000 in colleges, it will still not be enough to accommodate a pool of young people who are outside the system. So one of the challenges I think we have now is, it will of course be the issues of the no walk-ins. It will also because be the issues of the online applications. We think they are exclusionary in nature because our basic education has not get the new entrance for that. It's only today, it's only this year where Panyaza was launching the chalkboard free basic education in Gauteng. But is it happening in Limpopo? Is it happening in KZN? Is it happening in the Eastern Cape? The answer is a definite no. And those are people that we feel like being excluded by some of this new system. Until such basic education trains the learners for such a process for the tertiary, then we can therefore say we're ready. But thus far, we feel that it's exclusionary in nature, and it deprives the students an opportunity to appeal some of their cases, because I have been assisting a number of students and a lot of other student activities and activists in the country where you struggle to get the result of your application. With UJ, I even had to call the President Kutso of UJ to say, hey, Pras, some of these challenges that we're experiencing with your own system, with UP was not even giving you the necessary response that you want, where you have to make an inquiry online.
Okay, so in simple English, you are agreeing with me that there's going to be boycotts?
Where we don't find solution, some of the challenges we're experiencing, we're going to put pressure to the system, and if needs be, a strike is the last option we'll consider.
Okay, so am I correct to say that you already are finding areas of concern which you believe that institutions are not going to be able to address so far, and therefore come the first day of institutions to open their doors for students, SASCO will be up there?
It's not guaranteed. Look, we're meeting with the minister on Friday.
Okay.
And part of it is in the FETs, for example. I'll give a typical example that is generally in the FETs. In the FETs, there's an agreement with the minister, there's an agreement with the NSFAS that students who qualify for NSFAS in the FET sectors must not pay registration fees. But there are some principles, there are some colleges that are still requesting students to pay registration fees. Okay. We hope to address that with the minister, but if it's not addressed, that is going to blow into the sector and it will create strikes. It's not necessarily that we want the strikes, we want the time to be in class on time and gear up for the academic progress. But if principals and some institutional management, they insist on being stuck on some of these wrong practices, will definitely go on strike.
Mr. Ngwanyan, I'm convinced that universities are not going to open peacefully.
Well, our attempt is to ensure that there's a smooth opening of universities. Obviously, we're getting some indications here and there. As you might have heard in the media, VETS, to some extent, UJ, the fact that the numbers of applicants far outpace the spaces that are available. But that's a reality, it's a standing reality, because we are a victim of our own success as government, in a sense that we have opened up the post-education training.
Yeah, you have to be victims, because with 30% pass mark and 40% pass mark, I'm sure a lot of people would make it.
Well, not in that sense, but I'm just saying that I think that's what when you opened, you began to quote the numbers, how the system has increased. We started at 400,000 students, now we are almost 1 million. And in terms of government objectives, that we must reach more than 1 million. Perhaps that's why we are building even these universities that will be extra universities, which are 3 now. Your Mpumalanga University, your Salt Plage, now we are opening this year the Sefako Mahato Health Sciences here in Gauteng, after we demerged Medunza from University of Limpopo, which will also start this year with students more than 24,000. But we want to debunk this overemphasis to universities. The system is quite huge. The post-education, the post-schooling education system. Your TVET colleges, we have about 50 of them throughout the country.
Okay.
And they provide these mid-level technical skills that our economy needs. So we want to redirect quite a large number of students in that space. And we have our CETAs that provide learnerships. We want to see a lot of students going in that space.
Okay, I want you to hold that thought there, because that's something that I want us to just talk about extensively. How do you ensure that people do not just focus on universities, but only after the break? This question time, please don't go away. Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today, Kai Ngwanyana, spokesperson for the Department of Higher Education and Training, Professor Kinta Berger, registrar at the University of Johannesburg, and Thabo Mloja is the deputy president of SASCO, South African Student Congress. Now, Mr. Ngwanyana, the minister has been at pains trying to say to people, look, consider other avenues. You don't necessarily have to go to UJ. You don't necessarily have to go to VETs and, UCTs and all that. There are FETs out there that can accommodate you. But the reality of the matter is, so far, FETs have been, they have not been profiled to be as good as universities, whether wrongly or rightly so, but that's the attitude and the mentality of many out there, that you go to an FET, we look down upon you, you are not qualified.
Well, there's a situation we are trying to turn around. We are on an aggressive mode now to emphasize this point that because we want to build a college system in this country, as you would see in other parts of the world, especially in Europe. We emphasize that colleges should be, we want to build them as the first choice for any matriculant who finishes his or her matric. We have already stabilized governance issues in our colleges. We have stabilized management issues, the quality of lectures. We have brought in now business. We are engaging with business to build partnership. I can tell you now, we are opening SETA offices now in all our colleges so that a student, upon finishing a particular qualification, will link them directly with the industry. For 12 months, they are doing that workplace experiential exposure, and to all intent and purposes, they are going to get employment. Okay. And I can tell you now that statistically, when you check the graduates from university versus the graduate from colleges, the most taken in the job market are those who come from colleges because of the kind of skills that are linked directly to the market. And we want to emphasize that the reorientation, that change of mind, that we want to see more young people going to these colleges. They are the way to go. They provide what we call scarce skills in our economy.
All right. Now, as the registrar, how many students are you taking in at the University of Johannesburg, for instance?
Well, of course, we take in our returning students.
Yeah.
But in terms of new first-time entering students, undergraduate level, there is about places for 10,500. And already,
how many applications did you get?
Already last year, when we closed our applicants, it was at 111,000. But there's duplication in the system, so there will be applicants that apply at more than one institution.
Yes.
And then of course they keep their options open. You know, and even at UJ they will apply for more than one qualification.
Okay.
But if I'm talking 111,000, it's heads, it's applicants.
Okay.
Some of them submitted two applications. So yes, there's a shortage of space, and I think, you know, UJ is actually standing out in terms of this very high number of applicants versus places that we can fill. But at all institutions, as you pointed out at the beginning of the year, of your introduction.
Now, just tell me, the caliber of students who are applying there, is it poor students? Is it, you know, students who are coming from a background where they would be able to pay for the fees?
At UJ, we have always proud ourselves that we are really very accessible in terms of, I think in comparison with other institutions, our tuition fees, and then also in terms of the support that we provide.
Okay.
In particular for students to assist them with this transition period from secondary school to university, and then also in terms of financial support that we provide. And that financial support is not always so visible that it's just in terms of a bursary, but we, for example, it as a very extensive feeding scheme for our hungry students. We have a very extensive tutor system to ensure that they are academically successful. So I think when we say UJ's profile, it is that we have a huge number of first generation students, and that we keep in mind when we also design our support programs.
Are you happy with the type of support that students are getting at institutions? Just referred to financial. I know you always complain about funding and all that.
Yeah, we are quite happy where there is such support. We've always said the challenges of inadequate funding in the sector is bigger than what government can really resolve alone. So universities, some of them are sitting with serious reserves with them. They have to come to the party and play a part. Beneficiaries of NSFAS, wherever they are, those who are working now, they have to pay back the money of NSFAS and ensure that the scheme has more money, because it's one of the challenges that the scheme we know is quite facing, that those who are working are not paying back the NSFAS money, and therefore they have to ensure that there can be enough money to fund more students. There are some institutions that provide academic support, which I think it has to be all institutions. I will give you a typical example. There is no reason why a student must be rejected because they lack some points. All institutions must have development programs that ensure that a student, even if they don't qualify to study a BCom in economics, for example, they are able to get a course that can take them to a BCom in economics. I'll give you a typical example. One of the challenges why the FET sector, the TVET now renamed, is seen as a poor sector is because it's not properly articulated with the university system. When you have a qualification in the FET, you can't use it because as soon as you go to a university, they still say, where is your metric? And chances are, the reason why you went to an FET sector in the first place, you did not have a bachelor's entrance into the sector. So until such gaps are attended to, we know there's quite a work that has been done in the department to resolve such. But until such thing, those that are corrected, then the system will not go anywhere. So all institutions must give academic support, unlike what UCT is doing now, where they're using the national benchmark test, which must be a test that check a student to say, this is the student Thabo. He comes to apply at UCT. He writes a national benchmark a test which must say this is where we can place him, but instead what they're doing, they're using it as an admission criteria. You fail it, they reject you, and that is going to create serious havoc and chaos in that institution. We have said the national benchmark test, they must be used to assess the potential of a student and say, where can we place these students given the outcomes of such a test.
Okay, I want us to talk about the funding models and the corruption that is happening there, because Government, I mean, right now you've put what, 9.3 billion rand? 9.5 billion rand. But there's a lot of corruption that goes on. But we'll talk about that only after the break. Please don't go away, we'll return shortly. Welcome back. This is Question Time you're watching. My guest today, Kai Ngwanyana, is the spokesperson for the Department of Higher Education and Training, and Professor Kinta Berger, Registrar at the University of Johannesburg, and Thabo Moloja is the Deputy President of SASCO. Now, Mr. Ngwanyana, let's look at the funding. 9.5 billion has been set aside. We know it's not enough. Let's talk about the corruption that is happening there. How much is it costing?
Well, we can't quantify the level of corruption around the NFSAS disbursement and whether or not how it is redirected. But we know that our prima facie evidence tells us that there's a lot of corruption. There seems to be a collusion between some university administrators. To some extent, we don't exclude some officials within our own NSFAS fund, together with students, in terms of redirecting this money from what it is intended for. We have got some evidence that has been coming in some institutions that we cannot name them. But that became the basis within which the minister directed the department to appoint a forensic investigation, of which we have just finalized the terms of reference. We're expecting that probably next month, that investigation should be starting in all these particular universities. We ultimately, the intention is that the culprits will therefore be prosecuted, but also that investigation, forensic investigation, must able to come with the recommendation to the minister to say, how do we tighten the system? How do we close those particular openings within which they redirect the money? For instance, we can't justify last year in 2014 that we dispersed more than 9 billion. And in no time we're told that this money is depleted. We had a lot of strikes in TUT, in other universities, in UKZN and so on, about this issue of NFSAS. And we were saying that that was the highest ever allocation we did last year in terms of records. But it became clear that what we are dealing with is a situation where this money meant for the poor kids who are coming from rural areas and township get redirected through corrupt means, and the real beneficiaries end up not getting it. And they lose out in the system in terms of being this. So that forensic investigation is going to uncover exactly, and we are going to be open about the findings and the culprits across the system as it will be.
Now, at the university, for instance, has the fact that the NSFAS offices have had to be located within the universities themselves helped in any way to eradicate some of these challenges?
I think where there is a good management of these funds in the university, then definitely it helps. I think it's easier also to communicate to students, if you are also in control there, and then also to make sure that your processes are long planned in advance. So I must say at UJ, it required additional capacity, from our finance divisions to be able to handle that very effectively. But I believe that at UJ, we have the processes in place. It is always still an issue that students like with the application process itself, that applicants apply in many cases very late. And that then create perhaps a bottleneck at certain stages of the year. So I would really appreciate it if the student bodies also can assist us there, to also encourage their fellow students to make sure that they apply on time, that the documents are provided on time.
How many students, for instance, out of 10,000 that you're taking, how many require assistance from TEFSA? Not TEFSA, exposing my age.
From NSFAS.
From NSFAS, yes.
Yeah. I unfortunately don't have that number, but you know, many students are needy, but not all of them qualify for NSFAS. That's the problem, because it's only the poorest of the poor that actually qualify. And as we have spoken, you know, before this show, that there's a great need for the next level of income from parents that are just above that NSFAS. And I think that is the problem. You know, what we always say is those students are not poor enough, but they can't afford their tuition fees.
SASCO, 200,000 students stand to benefit from NSFAS fund this year, right? Are you in any way interested in those? Because they are from your, what do you call it now? TVET, right? The department is saying, okay, 200,000, if you are at TVET, we will fund you, right? Are you in any way as SASCO encouraging your comrades, right, or what COSAS is feeding you, to say consider, you know, going to TVET as well? Because there's just as much funding there.
No, they are actually. We have a lot of structures in TVET colleges across the country, and there is and there is something that we must debate. The minister always comes and says in the TVET colleges there is a free education, what we have been struggling for, and we always say no, it's partial. It's partial in the sense that you still don't fund students accordingly. There are serious issues of where there's a policy now which is called NSFAS bursary guidelines, which says if you live less than 10 kilometers away from the college, you must not get money for transport. So it says if you live from 9 kilometers to the campus, you must walk to and from the
but
college.
You know, SASCO, you guys get so technical about, you know, things that really you shouldn't be fighting over.
These are the reasons why people will not go there in the first place, or will drop out there and consider going to create a stampede in universities. Fix the system and ensure that when you popularize the system, it's such that it's good. We're not saying work is not being done.
But you understand that 200,000 students, we're talking almost, what, 4 billion rents that is available to fund those?
It's actually even not 4 billion, it's about 2 billion.
No, but
for the TVET, because it's not the same with the universities. In relation to that. But I'm saying to you, those are our members, and this we're happy for that. But here's another challenge. Is the numbers are not far from last year's numbers. Last year's numbers, they were just above 400,000. All students were funded by NSFAS in the sector. This year numbers, 4.2.
Okay. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, you know, and I would really appreciate, I promise that SASCO will get you here within the next week so that we can just expand on some of these, perhaps with other student organizations as well.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
That was question time for today. Have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.